Do I need to introduce Aviv Bali, or shall
Let's
I start
assume the
with
audience knows nothing, although I imagine that's not the case. But some people watching this will know absolutely nothing. They don't. If they know the word Aviv, they might think that means spring.
Yes, it does mean spring in modern Hebrew,
Hmm.
but it is absolutely not the way the term Aviv is used in medieval literature on the calendar.
I once looked up when Aviv took on the meaning of spring in Ben Yehuda's dictionary, and what he does there is he brings examples of how the word's used throughout the centuries. And I believe it's something like a Barbanel or somebody like that who's the first one to use it to refer to what was called Kufat Nisan, which we call spring. So it's quite late that this term takes on the meaning of spring, and certainly in the Talmud, and I would say even more so in the Tanakh, it's a agricultural term.
Absolutely. Aviv is an agricultural term. In the Bible, it describes a certain state in the development of crops, and in particular barley.
Mm-hmm.
We're not entirely sure what this stage in the development of barley is, and neither were medieval Karaites.
Okay.
It is some sort of in the development of barley where it is developed enough to be damaged by hail.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you some verses, but I'd need to look them up.
That's okay. It's
Okay.
Exodus 9:32, but it's
Oh,
fine.
thank you. And it is also a state of barley where the seed can be parched in fire.
And that's
That
Leviticus
is,
2:14.
thank you.
So you're not just saying this as your opinion of how you understand the biblical text, in other words, what are you presenting here? Is this the opinion of the Karaite sources you read, or is this disputed by rabbinical sources?
So, what exact stage the Aviv is?
No,
or
those two criteria you just described for barley.
This is in the Bible.
Okay.
The term Aviv appears in contexts where it is clear that it refers to some stage in the development of barley where it is can be destroyed by hail and parched by fire, which means that it is some sort of relatively ripe, but not yet entirely ripe stage in the development of barley. But that's as far as the Bible will go.
So let me ask this question, because you also studied the Rabbinite calendar in that period. Are there Rabbinite sources, do you know, that say, oh, the Karaites are wrong, it's nothing to do with crops, Aviv is something to do with something completely else? Is there other sources like that?
No, I don't think so. Not as far as I know. So
this isn't a matter of dispute.
Yeah, no, this isn't a matter of dispute.
Okay.
Everyone agrees that Aviv is a stage in the development of barley.
Okay.
The dispute is about whether Aviv is a criterion for setting the calendar. Because the Rabbinites set the calendar by calculation, whereas the Karaites set the calendar by observation of natural phenomena. They set months by observing the first appearance of the new crescent, and they set years. They decided when to intercalate, when to insert a 13th month, by how progressed the ripening of barley was in that given year.
Okay. So, and then in the Talmud, it talks about how they would use, it actually talks about 3 criteria, and then there's different passages. Have you studied any of that? Because one of them they mention is Aviv.
The Talmud also mentions empirical intercalation on the basis of various criteria, one of which is Aviv, but it also mentions the ripening of fruit of the trees, and how the lambs and different...
There's a bunch of criteria.
Yeah, a bunch of criteria.
And then there's one statement that says when Aviv is one of them, everyone is happy.
Yeah, they like it when Aviv is one of them.
Yeah. Okay, and that was probably for some practical reasons of when you could then start selling and eating the crops, I would imagine. But anyway...
but also because it's in the Bible, because in the Bible it says, observe the month of Aviv and keep Passover.
So would you say that was and maybe this is outside your field because you said 10th, 11th century, but in the Talmudic period and in the Second Temple period, would you say that was like maybe a populist position, that it was maybe easier to convince the masses when Aviv was one of the factors versus, and I guess I'm just thinking out loud here, versus, the equinox, which isn't mentioned in the Bible?
I wouldn't know that.
Okay.
But, and I'm not sure we know too well how intercalation worked in Talmudic sources.
Okay.
In the Talmudic period.
Okay. Well, Talmudic period is different. I mean, these are kind of anachronistic things by the time the Talmud's written down, and In other words, you have this letter of Rabban Gamliel, who sends an intercalation letter to Babylon. But anyway, let's focus on the 10th to 11th century.
Yeah, let's focus on the Karaites.
This is fascinating stuff to me. And I came to many of these conclusions on my own, which sound very similar to your conclusions, but I'm coming to them from a completely different perspective. I'm coming to the perspective of a teenager who has all I have is a Mandelkorn's concordance of the Tanakh, and I'm opening it up and trying to figure out. Okay, I know the rabbis changed the calendar. My father told me that when I was a kid. What was the original calendar? And barley. Well, I mean, what is that like? How would that even work? It took me a long time to figure that out. Took a lot of experience to figure it out, and other people's experience that they shared with me.